Okay, welcome to the Runway demo on the 17th of August. Graham, you're going to give us a quick overview of the potential login setup.
Yeah, sure. So let me share my screen. Looks like that's working. Yep. So at the moment, we are in the process of doing the logging setup. So I've been working with Calliope from reliability and basically trying to put this all together. It's a really nice diagram she did about actually might be, yeah, here we go. So this is kind of more or less what we're looking at. We're initially looking at setting up, and we've made some slight tweaks to this. So we have all our different GCP projects. We have all our different Runway applications running in Cloud Run. And so the important part here is this box, the logging sync box, the pub sub queue box, and the push subscription box. So for every Cloud Run service, we're going to have a logging sync, a pub sub queue, and a push subscription. And these are just GCP constructs available in Terraform that we can use. So essentially, this will go into the reconciler, which is obviously like the part that runs for each service. And essentially, that will set them up for each one. And how this actually works is the logging sync tells Google to take the logs from Cloud Run and to put them on a pub sub queue. The pub sub queue is obviously where everything goes. And then we have a push subscription, which is basically telling Google when a message comes onto the queue, push that to a web endpoint. And so then we need some credentials to do that as well. And that was kind of the initial implementation. It's tweaked slightly. So it's still the same thing, only we just had to introduce some prom tail for each service as well. Although with some further discussion, we may actually see if we can remove this. I'm not entirely sure. And then we'll have the Loki tenant credentials off to the side here now, because we're going to deploy them once for each project and then just have all the services reference them. So in terms of actual work that's done, so we made a custom role with all of the bits needed to create logging syncs and pub subtopics and all that stuff. And now I've given that to the reconciler. So that's done. This is me assigning that role to the reconcilers. So that's done. This task I've done today and it is now ready for review. And that's basically putting the secrets we need for Loki and probably Elasticsearch in the future into Vault, and then basically consuming that and basically mirroring it from Vault into Google Secret Manager, so that all of the Google all the Google services and can easily fetch that. So that's the setup here. And then this finally was my first attempt at setting up the pub subtopic, the project sync, and the subscription. So those three key pieces I talked about. And then Calliope extended that. And this is kind of the state of the current work. How do is there a way to collapse comments? Anyway, this is just the same thing, but expanded, just some extra stuff needed for basically running prom tail as well. It's really hard to read this with all the comments in it, but essentially we have the same things, and now we're just adding an extra service to run prom tail and still a subscription and everything. So essentially we have a configuration of prom tail, which I believe is here. Whoops, is that going to work? There we go. So this is basically prom tail. We have push subscription from GCP into this, and that will basically, that's kind of then it talks to Loki and goes off into reliability's infrastructure. What's not shown here, and it still will be done, is the specific setup we'll need for code suggestions to make sure that they get their logs on Elasticsearch for backwards compatibility. So if we have a look at this setup here, if you notice that, so basically we'll have all this set up for every service. This part here, this pub sub queue, because we will have one, and we will have one for code suggestions, we will basically find that code suggestions one, and we will do a special setup where we will have a I think, a pull subscription. That will essentially, or maybe a push subscription, one type of subscription that will go into a reliabilities infrastructure, basically, for them to just probably just a pull subscription like they're currently doing. Anyway, because we have the logs. Sorry,
we could even use the existing topic, right?
I mean, we could
for code suggestions. I think.
Oh yeah, actually,
that's probably the easiest way.
Okay,
and then
so
all of the consumption stuff is already done.
Done. Yeah. Okay. So maybe then, actually, maybe I can do this in a separate MR. Maybe I'll feature flag it, so we only turn it on for code suggestions, obviously. But maybe we can do that here then. So the logging sync is where it goes onto the queue. So maybe I'll add another sync, like another one over here that goes onto the existing pub sub queue for Elasticsearch and it should all go through. Cool. All right.
And then boom, that's code suggestions logging done, right?
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, I'll have a look at that as well. That should be fine. Permissions might be the other thing. I'll have to go and tell reliability to, give us permissions, but that's solvable. Like, that's not impossible.
Graham, can you talk about the app labeled filter bit there? Just go into a bit more detail about what that filter is going to be and how it's filtering on the logs.
Yep. So, gosh,
Just
it is somewhere here.
Little icon on the top left of your comment that will collapse the discussions.
Thanks. Okay, so where is it?
Right in the top left above the discussion.
On the where it says 5
line 16.
Okay. Oh, this. All right. Okay. How many years have I worked at GitLab now and still? Right. Okay. Right. Great. Why is this one here? Go away. Okay. Go away. Oh god, there's lots. There's a collapse all button.
You can click at the top. You can where it says 5 unresolved threads. Can't you click on that and say collapse all?
There we go. See. Cool. So the filter is, we should be able to see the logging sync somewhere. If we scroll down, why is it not here? It should be in here. It's probably not showing up there because that's this is a merge request onto my branch with the existing work, so it's probably only showing the stuff that's changed. So here, that's probably the important part. So basically, resource type cloud run revision and resource label service name is basically equal to the Runway service ID. So we'll get all logs from all revisions basically onto the logging sync. And then from there, we can, I think this is what they're doing up here. This is what they're doing up here to kind of label it and like, I think this is where any transformation will happen. That's my understanding.
Okay. And are those things gonna is Loki using the same like type, the same label taxonomy?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
So that okay, good. Just checking that.
No, totally. It's a good question. And in fact,
because that's kind of one of the big benefits of Loki, right? Is we can kind of move to single label taxonomy across Loki and
Prometheus. Yeah. So and like the PromQL queries should just kind of be a lot more. Like PromQL and Loki's QL are the same.
Exactly.
Right?
And we can generate like in the at the moment we've got that way of mapping to generate Elasticsearch queries. We can just we don't need a mapping anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
The second question I have, which is really boring, but like we're starting to deal with this on dedicated, is how are you going to deal with rotation of secrets?
Good question. What I would like in general is for secrets to go away. So I don't know the full story, but there was a reason that Loki is just HTTP basic at the moment. I think
I can understand why that is. I can kind of I'm sympathetic towards that because it's kind of difficult to integrate with the cloud stuff from something like Loki, I guess. But I think we should definitely have we should be thinking about like how if we have lots of these, like how are we going to do it and how can we do it without bringing the service down or having an interruption to our logs. And
totally.
I don't know if that's more a Loki question than a Runway question. Probably is.
It's probably a Runway question actually, and I think.
So from Runway's perspective,
actually, no, you're right.
Where I would like I would like this to go is that we put things in a pub sub topic and then we don't care. And so that part is mediated by GCP permissions. And I actually think if we switch the push-based thing to a pull-based thing from Tail, then that can use GCP permissions, and then we don't need separate credentials. So that way it will all be managed by GCP permissions. That's where I think we should go.
Yeah.
There's actually...
Sorry,
yeah,
Andrew,
go
you
ahead,
go.
Graham. No, you go ahead first. And
I was just going to say, I think the problem is between Promtail and Loki. I think that's the problem. I'm not an observability expert. I don't know enough about this stuff, but I think the credentials are between Promtail and Loki. And ideally, I think you're right. I don't think we want to run Promtail, but I think this is a stopgap because of observability haven't got Promtail as a service yet, if that makes sense.
So I think that there's an interesting sort of philosophical question about where like our world ends. I don't know if you've thought about this already, like where we end and where logging begins. And maybe like it would actually make a lot of sense if the interface between the teams is PubSub.
And I think that was,
and so
yeah.
Is that the intention? Because I mean, in here, it looks like we're still doing stuff to pick things off PubSub. And maybe it should be like, we will deliver it to PubSub and it's your responsibility to then disseminate it however you want, authenticate it, you know, and that becomes like a really well-defined interface between the observability team and the and the Runway team. And actually, in fact, all teams and all, you know, anything in future where we're doing logging.
So I think that is the goal and the idea. So I think the reason that it's not done is because I think all of the setup from PubSub onwards, essentially, I think I'm not sure how we in Runway can dynamically create these topics and everything. But I think we're all in agreement.
I mean, maybe the way to do it is to encourage the team to have a Terraform module that kind of, you give them a PubSub. Maybe that's the only thing it has, right? Is like, this is the PubSub where I will be pushing messages, and then that Terraform module is responsible for setting up all the stuff from that PubSub to wherever it goes. Yeah. So
yes,
do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, because no, I do actually. And then we can include that module, team, but we don't own it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if they change, if they decide, well, we hate, we're going to go to, I don't know, grep, then they can, or BigQuery or whatever, they can change that module. But the interface, our interface with the team is PubSub. So they actually own a lot of this Terraform here.
Sure.
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do we cover that in the blueprint, either the one that you're working on, Igor, or the observability blueprint that Chance put together?
I don't think that's currently covered. I mean, the observability blueprint was really more metrics focused. We don't have the same level of detail yet for logging. But yes, I mean, we've been having a lot of conversations about this, and it might make sense to write it down formally somewhere.
I quite like that idea of having sort of different teams own their modules, and then you can kind of interface with that team, sort of, and then
with the same strategy. Would the same strategy apply with metrics?
Not
as much.
Partially, yes. I mean, we kind of have it for metrics, I would say, in the sense that we have kind of Thanos fronting everything, and you can easily plug your stuff into Thanos query. So in that sense, I would say it partially exists for metrics.
Got it, that makes sense. And I think also like much longer term, thinking about Runway as a more general service, which maybe even customers could take advantage of, making it as generic as possible would help with that. in terms of where we are today, Graham, and following that strategy, what if anything needs to change? Because I know you said earlier that there are some things that we might need to put in place from an observability point of view. So is this kind of still the way that we want to go, kind of to get to where we need to in the next couple of weeks?
I think for like, if we just need to get something now, I think this, although if I have a look at this option of like trying to throw logs over with a logging sync over to the existing topic, maybe we can short circuit this a little bit. But I think the big problem is, right, is that a lot of our infrastructure and our teams don't have a way for us to have an interface for us to get a service from them, right? So like, it's a very static infrastructure. I know because I built a lot of the tooling there. Like you have to do a merge request to add a new topic or to add something to like the prom tail configuration. So on our side of Runway, it's all dynamic. We can like create new services now easily. But what we would like to do is we've onboarded a new service, talk to another team like observability and say, this new server exists, please set up the infrastructure on your side to consume it. But there's no API and there's no way for us to do that dynamically. And this is what I've been trying to look at from this problem as a more generic sense above Runway in terms of like platform engineering and things like that. Like I've been looking at, I did an issue up about like trying to look at how can we start adopting a more general infrastructure focused platform engineering model, not just focused on Runway. And there's a lot of tools out there that kind of do this kind of concept of you can build containers and building blocks of infrastructure code, and then you can reuse that across. And I think that idea is really powerful. So if we can explore that more within platform, I think that would allow other teams to be able to give us the building blocks we need through their own infrastructure code, like Terraform or like Ansible or something like that.
And getting those organizational boundaries is going to be right.
Mm-hmm.
Is going to be important. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting the organization constantly on what different teams own and have responsibility for. So having a solid interface and infrastructure components that allow the organization to own the bits they're responsible for, like the logging stack, like potentially metrics, could be super useful.
It's very interesting because Maren and I had a call with some of the runners team yesterday, and we have the same sort of Conway's law type problems with them. And what we were talking about is actually kind of like a GitLab environment toolkit, but for runners, which is effectively the same thing. It's just a Terraform module that we would interface between ourselves and what they offer. So there's a lot of parallels there, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, the platform engineering, like infrastructure is platform. Infrastructure as a service model now is really taking off. Like I've been playing around with Crossplane and I've gotten my release environments work and Runway itself running within that now. And I'm going to start playing around with things like Get running inside of that and stuff. But it's really powerful in terms of that packaging model and compositions and being able to basically, oh, you run it in Ansible? Oh, well, as long as it comes in a Docker container, I can just plug it in and away it goes. So I think that model is very interesting, regardless of technology, whether it's Crossplane, Config Connector, or Pulumi, or whatever, they all kind of operate the same way.
I had a good conversation with Dave Smith at the end of last week, EM for the observability team, to kind of like talk about what their plans are over the coming quarters. Also to address, I think, some questions that were raised in this session last week. I've shared a link in the agenda, which talks more about the motivation for like why we're looking towards Loki. So that's worth taking a read through. But I think their strategy was very much around, like, obviously in observability, they own this tooling, but they're looking for ways to kind of get data into it. And it sounds like the model that we've just spoken about kind of gives us exactly that. So I think it would be mutually well received by the observability team as well.
Should we open an issue about that particular thing? Should I do that, or do you want to do that, Graham? Or
sorry, about which particular thing? Sorry, just
about like just moving this in future, not now, but in a future sort of direction to its own Terraform model.
Yeah. I can make a model. I can make an issue for that.
Okay, thanks. Otherwise, if you're busy, I can also do it, but just shout if you're not going to be able to do it. But yeah.
We may end up actually, like I can talk, I might be able to do it in this. I mean, the road blocker, so there's the biggest part of this is getting code suggestions out the door, right? So
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a future thing.
Yeah, no. Well, what I'm thinking is, even if I just get the workaround for Elasticsearch set up, as long as the logs are somewhere, this is a solution that's more like across all the Runway services. But if I get the Elasticsearch done sooner, then that's off the critical path, and I can go back and kind of reiterate this with the observability team, and we can like massage it and do a better job.
Like stuff like those low-key URLs in there, right? Like that would be behind. We wouldn't know it. That would just be sort of transparent to us. Yeah. Or
actually,
to us. But,
interestingly to point out as well with the Runway model is talking about taxonomy. Kind of highlighted how trying to translate our traditional model of canary and main is actually kind of interesting because
do they send canary logs to a canary local?
Well, I don't think we can, because a canary revision is only a canary revision for like the rollout time. So it's kind of it's a very weird kind of, we don't have a static canary, we have a dynamic canary, and then it kind of goes away.
I mean, maybe no, that's interesting.
It's not really a stage in the Cloud Run model.
Actually, and
so we like you kind of have a very high cardinality stage label. That's the revision, and there's pros and cons to that. But I think if you kind of change the way that you're thinking about it, you can use annotations to surface the fact that there was, like different revisions running at a particular time frame.
Now that I think about it as well, is maybe what I should have done, and this can be changed, so it's not the end of the world, is actually make the revision names more well known and discoverable, right? Because like, if you want to. If you want to know, okay, I've just started rolling something out, and I can look in the logs, filter it by revision. At the moment, they're just random names, but I can change that to maybe like the Git char that's coming from the source project. So you're like, okay, I'm just rolling out Git version, whatever. I'll go to the logs and I can see, filter by that revision and see, just what's going on at that revision, perhaps, maybe, or an annotation or something.
Adjustment. Could we default to tag if like head is a tag, otherwise a char, just because it becomes a little bit more recognizable.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So if it's a tagged release, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whatever the.
The same's going to be true of cells, right? And the move towards that is it's going to be far less static, permanent environments, and more very fluid percentages of traffic directed.
I mean, in fact, whole cells will be sort of migrating across at different stages, right? So some cells will be far more advanced in that deployment than others.
Yeah, I think the concept of stage doesn't really make sense in this world, and maybe we should just put everything into main.
I think at least for the moment, then we can have a think. I'm not quite. I think maybe it is possible. Like, I guess so. In the Runway world, let's assume that it is easy to route logs from the canary stage. At the moment, a service is only kind of being rolled out and thus in canarying for like, let's say 30 minutes. So it's kind of like you would have this burst of logs in the with canary tag for 30 minutes, but then they would no longer be in the canary. They'll go back to the main stage. So I'm not sure if that would be harder to follow. Like you get a log stream and then you get some logs in the canary and then they're like gone again. But I don't know.
The one thing with blue green is generally like blue is considered to be like the current, and then green is the so you could say like you could call them blue and green where that those switch over. So once it's fully rolled out, becomes blue again, and then the next thing becomes green. Just as a, because like logs is fine because we can just use a revision, but we can't do that with
metrics,
with Thanos or with Prometheus.
Yeah,
but we'll still want to know about that green, you know, the new recipe thing. So we need to label it somehow. So maybe we move away from main and CNY to blue and green, where blue is the current main sort of one until it's not.
I mean, I think something more dynamic could give us more flexibility as well. Because there's also things like review apps, which are effectively single endpoint canaries, right? So I kind of like the idea of not having a fixed, like, this is canary and this is main, or this is blue and this is green, but really have it be more dynamic.
But the blue and the green would swap around at the end of a process. Yeah, as long as I don't really mind, as long as you can identify the new code,
the new
in
stuff.
metrics.
Yeah. Because I mean, that's going to be critical, right? Because we want to basically say, oh, you know, it's the metrics have gone down because of on the new revision. Like that's rollback time,
or this is across all of them, so it's probably not related to the release.
Sure, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, something to think about.
Join with deployment on the Kubernetes side, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, replica set of the.
Yeah, to figure out which one is old, which one is new.
I mean,
but it's more the cardinality in the metrics, right? Where you can't just keep. I suppose you could, because
I think you're going to have to filter
I think it's
by revision, like in the metrics side. That's the only way to do it, and I think that's how their automatic rollback system, which we don't use currently, works. I think they basically split it by revision.
Cardinality wise, I think it's fine, because
we already record those
of
replica set IDs on Kubernetes through kubestate metrics anyway, so maybe it's not as
like
it's also a subset of the pod name or instance, like,
which is much higher.
So and it correlates with that, so it doesn't explode the cardinality further than what we already have.
Than that already is, exactly. You know, you're probably right. Yeah, you are right.
I could be wrong, but at any point in time, there should only ever be 2 Cloud Run functions actually reporting metrics, right? Sorry, revisions, 2 Cloud Run revisions reporting metrics. Like once the new one's completed deploying, you're back to 1, and then you get 1 new revision, you get metrics from both, and then it goes back to 1.
Yeah, it should be fine.
Yeah, unless we do review apps, and then all bets.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. Fair. Yeah. But even review apps, right? Like we wouldn't have more than, like, we wouldn't have 100 review apps, surely.
No one needs more than 64K of RAM.
Yeah. Okay. Looks like we're at time. Thank you all so much.